Okay, hi everybody. We are live with Saving Cinderella, the class. This is session 5, all about Merida from Brave. For those of you just joining us, I'm Faith Moore. This class is based on my book, Saving Cinderella, What Feminists Get Wrong About Disney Princesses and How to Set It Right, available on Amazon, and a link below this video if you'd like to buy it. I have 3 wonderful students with me today. Those are the people that I will be talking to in the class. If you are not one of my 3 wonderful students, I can't hear you, so I won't be able to talk to you, but you can talk to each other and comment to me, which I will see later in the comment box on this video if you're watching live on YouTube. And I am not going to talk to you people watching at home anymore until the very end. So what I'd love to do is just have everybody first introduce themselves. And if you could say your name, something about yourself, I mean, like maybe what you do for a living, but if you don't want to say that, just something about who you are, and how you feel about the movie Brave. So I will go first. My name is Faith. I'm a stay-at-home mom and a freelance writer, and I hate the movie Brave. I will now say the caveat is that if you love the movie Brave and you're about to introduce yourself, this is a safe space. So let's start, let's see, from my side, let's start with Winter. Go ahead. We have to unmute ourselves, otherwise we can't hear each other. Okay.
I'm Winter Naomi Vera. I'm otherwise known as Princess Winter on Twitter and like all that stuff. And I love the mother-daughter dynamic and stuff because I can relate to that. But yeah, other than that, it's like when you put your connection with just when your connection is just family or just friends, and in a time period where that doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like, and long story short, there's a reason Pixar doesn't do doesn't do princess movies.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I'm glad to have you, Winter. Thanks for sharing that. And Jennifer, you can be next.
Hi, I'm Jennifer McDowell. I am the writer of the www.deskofjduca.com, and I am part Scottish, and I was babysat by my great-grandmother who was Scottish, and I am extremely disappointed in this film.
That's funny. Yeah, I get a lot of, I love this movie because it's Scottish and I'm Scottish. So there's a lot of like Scottish love for this film, but okay. And last but not least, Claudia.
Hi, I'm Claudia. I'm a retired physician and stay-at-home mom of a girl and a boy. I have a 6-year-old daughter. I'm a lifelong Disney princess lover. And I can understand the appeal from the daughter's point of view to Brave, but from the mother's point of view, it's the opposite of all the other movies, where the mother is pushing the daughter towards adulthood and independence, and the daughter wants to stay a child. So that, to me, that is not very appealing. My daughter loves the songs, and she has big curly hair, so she loves to dress up as Merida, but it's not the family favorite.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a really interesting take, actually, that idea that it's really a movie from the perspective kind of the mom, that the mom is saying, come on, get with the program, and the daughter is kind of not so into that. Yeah, great, excellent. So we've got a sort of variety of responses. It sounds like nobody loves this movie, but there are some things that maybe we can relate to and some things that maybe we can't. And this whole time, I mean, this is session 5 of these classes, and this is the first movie that we've talked about that I'm going to say negative things about, right? I've been trying to sort of rehabilitate the older princess movies all the way up until Beauty and the Beast, and we didn't do a class on Aladdin, but even Jasmine has some redeeming qualities. And now we've tipped into the part of Disney, the time period of Disney where things have gone a little bit awry. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about. I'm just going to give a little bit of background about the movie for all of us to just kind of have in our minds. And then I'm going to talk about sort of what I think is going on in the movie. And I'm going to get your guys' take too. So as Winter was saying, Merida is the first and only Pixar princess, but she is an official Disney princess. So the sort of goals of the filmmakers are a little bit different because it's a whole different team of people. When it came out, the Disney Renaissance had come and gone. I mark the end of the Disney Renaissance with like The Lion King. Other people like to include like The Hunchback of Notre Dame and a couple of other ones that I can't remember now. But that's where I mark it. I think The Lion King was the end. And so we had Mulan, we had Pocahontas, and then there was this sort of long gap. Then there was this sudden resurgence of the traditional princess with the Princess and the Frog, and then Tangled, and then Brave. So it's kind of like, oh, maybe we're going to get some more traditional princesses and some really great role models, and then no, sorry. This movie is designed specifically to rehabilitate the Disney princess trope. The idea is they're like overtly saying there was something really wrong and anti-feminist with all of those other Disney movies, and this movie is going to rectify all of that. So Brenda Chapman, who wrote the movie and created the story, said of Merida, she's strong inside and out. She's not just a simpering pretty face waiting around for romance. She was created to turn that whole idea on its head. So they've totally bought into this sort of like princess critic idea of what is going on with these movies. And it purposefully deconstructs the princess narrative. That's its job. That's what it's trying to do. But it's very clear from watching the movie that the filmmakers don't actually understand fairy tales, how they work, stories, all of that kind of stuff. And so when they deconstruct it, they don't actually put it back together in a way that makes any kind of sense at all. And so what's left is this horrible mess. So what I'd like to get from you guys, first of all, is just, since Merida says of herself, at least, since the filmmakers say that she is supposed to be this like totally different kind of Disney princess, I'm wondering, what do you guys think is different about Merida from other Disney princesses? It can be positive or negative. And why don't you try, you can raise your hand by putting it like up in front of your face, or I can just call on you guys. But if you have something to say, let me know in some way. But what makes Merida different than other Disney princesses? Jennifer, do you want to go first? Go ahead.
I think the thing that I noticed in the beginning right away was that the symbolism was gone, and it was very like the reality of archaic marriage.
Okay, great.
And then I also really recognized that there weren't any princes in the film. There wasn't anybody that, and all of the men as well, they're so, that from the animation to their behavior is grotesque. And every single one, even the little brothers, they don't talk. They just like run around like, and I thought that was very interesting and pointed that all of the men were purposefully boorish and then also drawn that way.
Yes, absolutely. So great. So it's much more sort of realistic in the sense that the ideas about like who you have to marry and why you have to get married we're not in the realm of sort of like true love's kiss and that kind of thing. We're in the realm of like feudal lords and marriages for convenience and for like diplomatic reasons, right? There's no prince at all. Like nobody shows up at the end, and there's no marriage. And the men are particularly I put gross men. They're particularly like awful. All of them. They're not a single one is redeemable. I mean, the dad is like nice. Like he like she loves her dad, but he's still pretty bad. We're gonna talk about him later. Does anyone want to add to this list? Claudia?
The fact that there is a mom figure in the movie. The only other one that has a mom is Tangled, but she's not really her mom. She's the evil stepmother, let's put it this way. And so that was interesting to me.
Yes, absolutely. Right. So this movie is all about mothers and daughters. That's what the movie's about. And so she has a mom, as opposed to, and that's totally right, a lot of the other princesses either don't have a mom, or they're being raised by some sort of like stepmother who is evil, or they've been estranged from their mom. So like Sleeping Beauty has a living mother, but she doesn't grow up with her. And same with Rapunzel, has a living mother, but she doesn't grow up with her. So yeah, there's an actual good person who is raising the child. So that's different. Winter, did you want to share one? Yes, no?
Yeah, I most of you guys can
Okay.
we actually see her, but very rarely.
It's a little hard to hear you. I think you're cutting out just a little bit for us.
Can you hear me now?
A little bit, yeah. Go ahead. What were you saying?
Yeah, we actually see, like, other princesses, like, we usually see them in their teenage years and stuff like that. Never see.
Hang on. Yeah, I can start kind of cutting in and out. So I'm going to stop you for a second, and I'm hoping it's going to come back on, but just hang on because I can't hear exactly what you're saying. But let's stick with this list. So there are some differences, right? And these are legitimate differences about the movie. Here are the things that princess critics say are different about her. They say she's different because she doesn't fit in. She's different because she doesn't want to marry someone she doesn't love. And she's different because she clashes with her parents and gets her way. That's pretty much what princess critics say. Like she doesn't fit in, like she's got this crazy hair and she's supposed to keep it under wraps, and she likes to shoot her bow and arrow when she's supposed to be sitting demurely like a princess. Right? So I'm wondering, can you think of any other Disney princesses who have those characteristics? They don't fit in, they don't want to get married if it's not for love, and they clash with their parents. Claudia?
Not that clashing with the parents, but Belle is, she doesn't fit in, she doesn't want to marry Gaston, and yeah.
Okay.
None of them really are insiders, let's say. Cinderella is an outsider. Aurora is an outsider. They're all outside. Ariel is an outsider. They're all outsiders who are not fitting in and are flying towards a dream. But that dream is different than Merida's, let's put it this way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I totally agree with you. Every single Disney princess does not fit in some way. Okay. So what about she doesn't want to marry someone she doesn't love? Can you think of another princess that doesn't want to marry someone she doesn't love? Winter, yeah, go ahead.
Belle?
Uh-huh, yep. Belle doesn't want to marry Gaston, right? I mean, what about just like generally, like what if there isn't actually like a specific person, but like, can you think of a Disney princess that would marry not for love? No, right? Like every single Disney princess wouldn't marry unless it was for love, right? Yeah, Winter, go ahead. Who?
Tiana initially didn't want to, like, she kissed the prince just.
Yeah, it's still hard to hear you, but Tiana is at first initially, right? She's not into love, but she doesn't even really want to marry, and her journey is to kind of realize that love is important and that without it you can't really get by. So even she, I think, wouldn't get married without love. Yeah, but so like there are some variations here, and then clashing with her parents. I think not all of them do, but plenty of them do. I mean, Ariel does, and Aurora does, if we consider the fairies to be her parents, and they raised her, right? And then they're telling her, "You're a princess, you have to go to the castle," and she doesn't want to. So this idea that like Merida is so different and that she's unique because of these things, it's just a misreading of all of those other older films, the way that we've been talking about for the past few weeks and in the book and everything. So There are a couple of other things that are maybe different about Merida. She's got really crazy hair. She shoots a bow and arrow, and she likes to play in the woods. So those things make her different, but those things are really superficial, right? And have nothing to do really with who she is inside. So when we meet her, she's a princess who wants to get out from under the plan that her parents have made for her, which is that she's supposed to marry one of these guys and take on her role as the princess of Dunbrook or whatever it is. And that sounds pretty similar to every other Disney princess who came before. The only difference really is that we don't actually know what it is that she wants to do instead. We know that she likes to shoot bow and arrows and ride her horse through the woods, and that she doesn't want to wear pretty dresses and, you know, sit in her throne. But we don't really know what it is that she wants. I mean, like, you know, Ariel wants to be human, and Belle wants to have an adventure, and, you know, Snow White wants to not be a slave anymore, and so does Cinderella. But we don't really know what she wants. So here she is. She's in a very typical Disney princess situation, but she doesn't actually have a dream to follow. So far, not so feminist, right? So the whole issue with Brave is that the filmmakers are trying to push back against something that isn't real. So they're making this manifesto against a kind of straw man argument, but it's sort of worse than a straw man because they have created it. And it's like everybody thinks now that this exists, that this narrative about the Disney princesses is true, and that they're anti-feminist. And so they're trying to take that apart, but they don't understand any of the tropes, and they don't understand what was going on in the first place. There's one thing before I continue, I must acknowledge that this movie is full of bears. And that we're not going to talk about them very much at all, except for the one that the mom turns into, and maybe a little bit the bad one, Mordu. I don't know why this movie is full of bears. There's just a whole bunch of bears. And, you know, I spent a really long time after the movie was over, I write about this in the book, trying to figure out what the heck was going on with all those bears. And I don't know. I don't know why there's all these bears, but I just need to acknowledge there are bears. Little boys get turned into bears. The mom is a bear. There's a really mean bear. The witch is obsessed with bears. Okay, but I have nothing really to say about that except as it has to do with the symbolism and what we're going to talk about in a minute. So just acknowledge that. Okay, I think that there are three main things that this movie is trying to deconstruct that actually don't need to be deconstructed. So I'm going to put them up here. I've written them previously. Okay, I think it's trying to deconstruct fairy tale shorthand, like all of those different symbols and tropes that are in fairy tales to let us know what is really going on under the surface. I think it's trying to take them apart because I think it doesn't understand that they're symbols. I think the filmmakers felt that those are literal things, like the princess and the prince and, you know, all of the love at first sight and all of those things. It doesn't get it. They don't get it. They think they're literal, and so they want to tear them down. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and that's related, is the princess narrative, the specific story of a princess having a dream, breaking away from her family of origin or some kind of mother figure and going and getting the thing that she wants. They don't want that to happen because it's like they want to keep that connection with the mother. They don't understand why all the mothers are evil. They don't understand why she would end up with a prince at the end. That seems really regressive to them. So they're trying to deconstruct that. And the last thing is they're trying to deconstruct masculinity itself. And Jennifer was talking about what is going on with all the men in the movie, and something really specific is going on with all the men. So I want to take this sort of point by point. And I'm going to start with masculinity. I know this is the bottom, but I'm going to start there. So once the princess films started to become feminist, right? This is where they start to insert this idea of arranged marriage. That's not really in the other movies. The only movie that it really is in is Sleeping Beauty, and it turns out that the guy she's arranged to marry is actually the guy that she wants to end up with in the end. So that doesn't really count, right? But this idea that a princess has to marry just some random guy and how unfair that is. Starts to show up, it shows up for the first time specifically with Jasmine, right? All these suitors are coming and trying to win her hand, but really she just wants to marry for love. And then it's a little bit there in Beauty and the Beast because Gaston is this other guy that all the townspeople think she should marry, but really is not the right guy for her. So there's sort of the insertion of this idea that like the princes are just kind of random guys that kind of show up and they get to choose the girl. And so then these feminist princesses get to push back against that idea that never was there in the first place. So that's the first thing. Winter, did you want to say something? Sorry.
I was just testing my audio.
Okay. Yes, I can hear you much better. Great. Okay, good. So this idea that princesses are always being forced to marry these randos is like completely an invention of the princess critics. Okay. In Brave, Merida's suitors are completely awful. There isn't a single one that she would want to marry, right? And they're arrogant, they're stupid, they're childish, and they're completely inappropriate for her. So we can all agree with that. She shouldn't marry necessarily any of those guys. But that's a decision on the filmmaker's part in order to push Merida to choose no guy, right? Also, the father, as Jennifer was saying before, she loves her father, but he's an enormous brute and he's always brawling. And in fact, Eleanor, the mother, at one point has to like yank him by the ear like a child and scold him in front of all of these other guys because he's so childish and stupid. And if this woman wasn't there to take care of him, what would he do? So I'm wondering if you guys have thoughts. What is the movie saying about men? These are the men. That's it. There's these three guys. There's their dads who are also stupid. And then there's the father. And that's it. Jennifer?
Yeah, like something that I thought was so interesting as I was watching it was not only do they take everyone who's man and make them grotesque, therefore implying that masculinity is grotesque, but then, like you were saying, Merida doesn't have a dream. All she has are qualities that are very similar to vapid, empty things. Like she is condescending during the archery tournament, and she has skill and agility and likes being outside, but it almost sort of mirrors but she's outwardly beautiful and a princess, but it sort of mirrors the all that the men have that they're trying to say. So that was just something that I noticed.
Yeah, exactly. So there's no there for these guys either. There's these sort of caricatures of just sort of ridiculous, silly men, and we don't even really know what they want or whether they want to get married to her either. And yeah, go ahead, keep going.
Well, what else? Something else that I noticed, and perhaps this is unfair, you'll let me know. But not only did all of the men seem idiotic, but it didn't seem that Merida overly had a ton of intelligence herself. Like when she's trying to talk to her mother, she doesn't try to explain herself. All she does is complain and say it's not fair. And I was thinking too, like, I think this comes down to just the whole entire movie is bad storytelling in general. But like, for example, in Little Mermaid, you can see that Ariel has a good relationship with her dad. It's just they butt heads every now and then. There's no sort of loving moment between the mother and daughter before everything else happens. So that was just something that I noticed. It seemed like an insincere relationship, not really how mom and daughters are.
Right. So Merida definitely is much more of a child than the other Disney princesses that come before her, and I think that is sort of part of what the movie is trying to say, that she's still a child. But I think like we as the audience don't really want to see her when she's a child. We want to see her when she is about to step out of childhood and into adulthood and do something. And we don't know what that something is. And what it turns out to be is basically like turn back around and go back home with mom and dad. And that's really not appealing to me, at least. But Winter, do you have thoughts about what it's saying about men? Oh, I can't hear you. Are you muted still? Yeah, sorry, I can't hear you. Okay, wait, I'm gonna come back to you. I promise. Hold that thought. But I'm gonna keep going, and then I'll come back to you about men. Okay. So the thing is that Merida's going to have to marry eventually, right? Like we want her to get married eventually. And these are the guys that are available. Like she could go out in the world and you know, move to another country and find somebody, but you know, she doesn't seem to want to do that, or that she's going to do that. And so there aren't really any choices as far as we're aware. So the movie is essentially condemning her, its princess, to spinsterhood and saying that this is better than finding a guy, right? Because the filmmakers are choosing what these princes look like, and they're not giving her an alternative. So what they're saying is being alone is better than getting married. And that isn't true. What is true is maybe it's better to be alone than marry one of these losers. And that's true, but let's find her somebody better that she can be with. And they don't. They choose not to, because that's not you know, that isn't their agenda. Not to mention the fact that she has to marry in order to maintain the alliance between the 4 tribes. And if she doesn't, they're going to delve into civil war. So her decision not to marry, or not even to like get to know any of these people, is really selfish. So it seems fairly clear to me that initially, like at some point during the process of making this movie, the prince that gets turned into the evil bear Mordu, which ends up having nothing at all to do with anything, was meant to be the prince for her. Like I think that the idea was there are these horrible people, but this other guy is, you know, has learned how to be a good guy in order to, you know, through being a bear, and now he's the guy for her. But that can't happen either, because this manifesto is about how men are so horrible, and they're childish, and they're disgusting, and they're brutes, right? So that got scrapped, and then we've got this weird story about the men. Winter, I think I can hear you again. What did you want to say?
You can hear me now?
I can.
Okay. Yeah. The issues you bring up are the issues I have with like all quote unquote feminist films. They require that the men be less than the women, so that the women can actually be the like big hero and stuff like that. And they like, I hate it because like it doesn't really show a woman being strong. It just shows that women cannot get ahead in this world unless all the men are idiots and stuff. And it's like, what hope do women have if that's their philosophy?
Yeah, that's such a good point, because I think the issue with a lot of modern feminist theory is that they judge women on the standards of men and then find them lacking, and then need to pull down the men in order to move up the women, because women obviously can't compete as men. They're not men. I mean, why would we want to? Right. So I think that is really a fundamental issue with any of these movies, right? And so the movie is saying, just like Winter was just saying, the movie is saying men are disgusting children who need to be taken in hand by women, and really aren't worth a woman's time. That's what we need to do to men in order to rise victorious as women, right? And you know, it would have been one thing to say, you know, this trope of the prince riding in at the end and rescuing her isn't working for us. Let's deconstruct that and think of how we can get her in a more equal relationship, for example, with a loving guy. And they don't need that. Instead, they just say men as a group are awful. Who needs them? And it's like, you know, that's obviously not true. And so that's really problematic. So that's the first thing, is the movie kind of just tries to take apart masculinity in general in order to get rid of the trope of Prince Charming and the trope of love at first sight, and that love is something that you need to complete your life and have a full life. And I think that's really harmful, because, you know, what is Merida ever going to do now? When we leave her at the end of the movie, that's it for her. You know, she gets to be with mom and dad. She gets to reconcile with her parents, but ultimately we need to leave our parents and we need to move on and we need to find lives for ourselves. And we don't know that that's going to happen for her. So that's one issue. Okay, and then let's talk about fairy tale shorthand and what's going on here. So Brenda Chapman, again, who wrote the movie, this is what she said about creating this story. She said, "I went through many fairy tales looking for a mother and daughter story, and I just didn't find one. I'd find some with a mother, but she would disappear for no apparent reason, and a prince would show up to save the day. So I decided to try and create my own story." Okay, so I'm wondering, why do you guys think she couldn't find any fairy tales about a mother and a daughter? Do you guys have any thoughts about that? Claudia?
Yes. So I always say to my husband when I'm watching fairy tales that when you're a child, you have to watch fairy tales to learn how to grow up. And when you're a mom, you have to watch fairy tales to not become Mother Gretel. So, and I think that's why you don't have them in the story, because once a woman grows up, the healthy parent kind of flows through. But when you have a dysfunctional relationship with a mother, then the child struggles to grow up. And just coming back to your point about the deconstruction of manhood, I feel like this movie deconstructs the mythology of womanhood too, because her mother is in theory what happens to you after happily ever after, right? She's a princess, now she's a queen. Right. And her mom has all these virtues. She can sew, she is poised, she's beautiful, she's elegant, she's kind, she's proper, all these typical female characteristics, all of those who marry the spies. And the fact that she wins quotes in the end, it's also a stroke on womanhood. Like, men are idiots and grown women who are well adjusted are not good either. So are you just stuck in your teenage years forever? Isn't that creepy? I don't know, just that's that's weird.
Yeah, those are two excellent points, right? The reason that there are no fairy tales with a healthy mother-daughter relationship is not because there's no such thing as healthy mother-daughter relationships, but rather because a fairy tale about a princess is telling a very specific, is giving a very specific lesson, which is when you grow up, you in some way have to break away from your family of origin, even if it's a totally mutual and loving and kind breaking away that includes much contact between the child and the parent, right? At some point, the child has to leave the nest and go away and do the thing that makes them them instead of the thing that makes them part of this family. And I think, and so when it happens in a fairy tale, it happens, very dramatically, and there is this kind of evil mother figure involved a lot of the time because it wants to highlight that piece of growing up, which is true. And I think, Claudia, what you're saying also about mothers is so important too. Like, a mother can read the fairy tale and think, oh, I don't want to become the evil queen or Mother Gothel or whoever. I don't want to become that person. I have to let my child go, or in this case, my daughter go. And I think, that's why this doesn't exist. And that quote from Brenda Chapman tells me she actually didn't even know what she was trying to take apart. It's one thing to say, like, I want to tell a story where the mother is kind, but the daughter wants to break away, and at the end they're still connected, but the daughter has moved on. That's fine, that's okay. We can tell that story. But she didn't even know that was a trope and that she was breaking that trope apart, right? And the second thing is, going back to the sort of masculinity, femininity idea, that is an excellent point too. Eleanor, the mom, is meant to represent all of the things that Disney princesses are now supposed to be. Right. So this very sort of poised, she's very obsessed with kind of like etiquette and how we do things and what we wear and how our hair looks and, who says what when and all of these things is supposed to be kind of like, that's what Disney princesses are like. And look, here's this other one with hair and all of this stuff. But obviously that's not really what Disney princesses were like to begin with. So that's kind of like, Eleanor she has a lot of problems. And she does need to change in the movie. And so I think one of the things that is important to notice is that in trying to make a movie about a mother and a daughter, and that sort of, and reconciling them instead of pushing them apart, which is what the story should do. This movie makes a lot of like really strange symbolic comments that I don't necessarily know that it knows it's making, but it is making. And here's the thing. If you take away the insane bear subplot with Mor'du and everything, and that doesn't make any sense, what you've got is essentially Beauty and the Beast. You have a person who, because of, in this case, her actions, is turned into a beast, and needs to earn love and feel love in return in order to be transformed back into a human being. The only problem is this person is not a man. This person is a mother, okay? And the person that needs to love her is the daughter. And just in case we forgot, right? The reason that the beast in Beauty and the Beast is turned into a beast is because his beastliness represents his like base male urges, right? I don't think that the mom has any base male urges, right? Like she's a little too OCD. So maybe she should be turned into like Cogsworth, like a clock, you know, that is like wound up, or like a book of rules, you know, some like that is, there could be like some sort of symbolic transformation for her. But the notion that she should become a beast and then be transformed again is basically sort of saying that the mom is somehow, you know, a sort of unchecked man and needs to be turned into a woman. And I don't think that there's anything in the movie to suggest that is true for her. And the other thing is that in Beauty and the Beast, the reason that the Beast is able to change is that Belle is completely herself. And she never changes. And she knows who she is, and she's sort of grounded. But Merida doesn't know at all who she is. She's a child, and she has no clue who she is, what she wants, and she needs to become herself. So, and the thing is, like, mothers don't need to change. They need to be left behind. Sorry, mothers. I mean, it's sad. I mean, it's one of the great sadnesses of my life that, you know, eventually my son will grow up, but it's also one of the great joys, right? Like it's also a great joy as a mother to think that your child will one day go out in the world and not need you. And you become Mother Gothel or the evil queen if you don't believe that. So it's not mothers that need to change. It's daughters, right? So if you don't, one last thing about this, if you don't believe that this movie is trying to make Beauty and the Beast, but with a mother and daughter, just watch the final sequence of the film, right? At the end, there's a ticking clock, a rose, or the sunset, right? There's something, somebody must say, I love you before a certain thing happens. I mean, it's literally like beat for beat, the same scene. So go back and watch it, homework, go back and watch it, and watch the final sequence where the beast is dying and Belle says, I love you, and the final sequence where the sun is going down and the mother is turning completely into a bear and Merida says, I love you. It's the same scene. It's the same scene. So the idea is that somehow we have just sort of taken this thing that happens between lovers and look, now it's happening between a mother and a child. See? Like true love can be between parents, it can be between lovers, it can be between siblings. And it's like, yeah, like you can love these people, but not in this way. And so it's just very clear that they don't get the shorthand and what it means. And they've just taken it apart, ripped it apart, and they don't know how to put it back together again. Okay. And so the last piece here is the princess narrative. So it's obviously a coming of age story, supposed to be, right? We've got a girl who is unhappy in her situation and she wants something different. And she wants to move away from what her parents are asking her to do and move out into the world. And yet it's a story where she ends up back at home. So here's a question that I have. What is the difference between what Merida does, which is going to a witch to ask for help with her problem, with her mother not letting her do stuff, and what Ariel does, which is go to a witch to ask for help with a problem because her dad isn't letting her do what she wants to do. What's the difference between those two stories? Anyone have any thoughts? Winter? Yeah, we can't hear you anymore. Here we go. I'm going to ask someone else, and then I'm going to come back to you. Maybe move. It helped to move. I don't know last time. Okay. Jennifer, do you have any thoughts? I know you love Little Mermaid. What's the difference between Ariel's ask and Merida's ask?
Gosh, that's such a good question. I think, again, I mean, just from my opinion, it was just another area of just unspecific storytelling. Like, you were like, who is this person? Like, what's their motive? You know, she makes a lot of wooden things. Is she bad? Is she good? You know, you know, you knew what Ursula and the reason was. I don't know, perhaps it's something that Ariel involved herself and herself alone, bargaining what she had. And, you know, in a sense, Merida seeks out not to change herself, but to change her mom for selfish reasons, you know?
Oh. Mm-hmm.
She doesn't try to manipulate her or, you know, whatever that is.
No, exactly. That's exactly right. Winter, let's see if we can hear you. Go ahead.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. Yes. Yeah. Like I was saying, Ariel knows what she wants. She's not happy being what everyone expects her to be, and she's not happy being a mermaid because she knows she's somebody else, and she's fallen in love with somebody that's part of who she really is and stuff. She knows what she wants, and she's willing to go out and get it, and but nobody is letting her she can't get it through her family or through anybody else, because like her father is, for lack of a better word, racist. And
right. Humanist. Yeah. That means something else. Never mind. Yeah.
But yeah. And so he's not going to help her. And like, she's in a position where she has no one else to turn to but the devil, until everyone else understands what she wants. Whereas Merida, this is another problem with feminists, with quote unquote feminist stories. They aren't seeking anything except independence from men, but we don't even know why they want independence from men, because they never tell us what they do want.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, I mean, I think that we'll come back to my question in a second, but I do want to say that one thing that happens with the more quote unquote feminist Disney princesses is that they don't have goals. It's like, if you look at Pocahontas, for example, I mean, she sort of wants to know what's around the river bend, which I guess is kind of like wanting adventure in the Great White Summer, but there isn't really a reason why she wants to see what's around the river bend. Whereas Belle really needs to get out. She's this intellectual in this town full of people who don't understand her at all. And that's a real drive, versus Pocahontas just kind of like, oh, I don't know what's around the corner. You know, and even Mulan, who is doing something really brave and doing something that it was necessary and was good. We don't actually know what it is that she wants out of life. Like we know in the story that she wants to help her father, and that she should, and that it's good that she does. And you know, we applaud that. But I think now she's back at home, and what is it that she wants? We don't know. So these more kind of feminist princesses, their focus, I mean, like Winter was just saying, their main focus is, how can I sort of assert that I'm better than the men around me? And it's kind of like, that's not a life goal. Like, it's not a life goal to like compare yourself to someone that's different than you and say you're better. It's like, you're not better, you're just different, you know? And I think that, or worse. And so, yeah, that's so true about Merida. We don't know what she wants. and except to not have to do what her mom says. And lots of children don't want to do what their moms say, and they should. So there's that. But yeah, the difference, I mean, this is kind of what you guys were both saying, but the difference between what Merida asks the witch for and what Ariel asks the witch for is that Merida asks to change someone else so that her life can go great. And Ariel asks to change herself so that the dream that she has can be fulfilled. And that's like, those are two completely different things, because we all know we can't change other people. That's just true in life. You cannot change other people. You can't make them think a certain way. You can't make them act a certain way. The only person that you can change is you. And I think that that's part of the princess narrative, is realizing like, oh, my family wants me to be this certain way, and they're never going to stop wanting that. And if I want to be a different way, then I have to do something, either through like magical intervention or just from leaving and, you know, doing your own thing. And that's something that Merida doesn't ever learn. And in fact, the story reinforces the idea that she needs her parents to tell her how to be. And, you know, she gets to not marry one of these guys in the moment, but like, unless she's never going to marry at all, and she's going to totally live with her parents forever until they die, and then she's alone with her three brothers who are idiots, like she's still left with these three other clans and their sons. And which none of them we don't want her to marry any of them. So I think that notion of like, it's someone else that needs to change, it's my mother that needs to change, is such a like a little child idea. And she never is disabused of it in the movie. And in fact, she gets what she wants by changing her mother. You know, she changes her mom, and instead of learning like, whoops, that was bad, now she's a bear and that's not good. Eleanor, the mom, through becoming a bear, actually does change. She realizes like, oh, I was being too hard on you, and I was asking you to do these things, and I shouldn't have been. And it's like, maybe she needed to realize that, but that's not what this story ought to be. So I'm wondering what you guys think about this. What does Merida learn in the film? Because, right, she's the protagonist. It's not Eleanor, right? She's not the protagonist that we're hoping for the happy ending for. It's Merida, right? So what is it that Merida learns from her experience? What do you guys think? Jennifer, do you want to say something? Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, that is like one of the things that also drove me crazy rewatching this, because like 3/4 of the way through the film, all of a sudden her mom changes her mind. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, okay. So she's like all of a sudden cool with like her marrying for love and like all that stuff. Like, when did that happen? You know, like with all the running around and eating fish, like, and I think it did bother me, because one could say that something that she learned was the value of family, and the you know, that her mom is irreplaceable and someone that she loves and cares about. But I think that's the thing. It seemed like the mother was the only one who gave a concession and kind of let her say, all right, well, you're able to now be in perpetual childhood. And they don't really connect in a sense intellectually, where there's a give and take, or it just seems very one-sided. And I think that one of the, you know, criminal things about this movie is that the protagonist is so incredibly without, I feel like, a soul or real meaning or drive.
Yeah, no, I think those are excellent points. And I think, right, we're supposed to feel like she learned to appreciate her mother, and that bond that she has with her mother, which is something that she can, in a story like this, she could learn to appreciate it after she's moved away from the mother, right? She could then be like, oh, and I want to maintain a connection to my mother. But sort of like, it's kind of like, from the parents' perspective, it's like, oh, the disobedient child has learned that the mother is right, except that the mother has learned that she was wrong. And so that doesn't actually make any sense, right? Because the mother has gone through this transformation that, yeah, is sort of apropos of nothing. And, you know, in the book, I sort of talk about like the things that make Eleanor change are things like Merida teaching her how to fish like a bear and eat berries like a bear. And so it's like, oh, I've realized that my daughter is actually a bear. Like, I don't think that Merida's big dream is to become a bear. I mean, maybe it is because the movie's just so freaking filled with bears. But I mean, like, I think that like it's really Eleanor that goes through the biggest shift, and that she's had her life. That's the point of the mother characters in these stories, the stepmothers and the queens and all of these people. That's the point of them. They've had their life and now they're past their prime and they have to pass the torch to the younger girl, and they don't want to, and then they have to, and so the girl has to break away. But really it's like Eleanor learning like, oh, actually I was wrong to make you act in all of these ways. And it's like, okay, but what about Merida? Right? What does Merida learn? So the problem, as we sort of talked about, is that she doesn't really have a dream. So she can't follow her dream and achieve it. So all that happens for her is that she makes this sort of grand pronouncement, like, I don't want to do your thing. And then it's like, in the end, it's like she kind of does have to do the thing, even though she doesn't have to immediately marry one of these guys. She's still there, being the princess, right, and ruling. And I guess she gets to rule in her own right, maybe, and marry whenever she wants. But she's still gonna have to marry one of these guys. So the movie says that basically what Merida learns, the movie tells us, is to mend the bond torn by pride. Right, that's what she has to do. And she thinks initially that it's the tapestry that she ripped, and it isn't. And so then it turns out that it's her relationship with her mother is the bond that was torn by pride. And so we're supposed to feel like both of them were too proud and that they are sort of humbled now and they recognize each other. But it actually is, what it really should be is, it should be the mother realizes she's got to let her daughter go. That's what should happen. And the daughter should realize she's got to break away. And that even if they love each other, they can't, she can't continue to be a child indefinitely. And actually, neither one of them learns any of that. Yeah, Winter, go ahead.
One of the things that like we bring up with or like there's a mother-daughter scenario in like all these fairy tales and stuff like that, or an absentee mother or whatever. But like but the thing that, I mean, like you were talking with that one professor one time about like how the princess will eventually become the quote unquote evil queen.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But I kind of see it as like they're not only breaking away. I mean, like it's not so much they're breaking away from their mother, it's that they're finding their own way in life, and their own, and their world isn't going to be the same as their mothers and stuff like that. And I feel like it would have been better if they had done something where Merida doesn't want to marry, or like there is somebody that she wants to marry or something like that, or
exactly,
and she finds him, or she just, or there's a change she wants, but like she wants to be able to find this person on her own. And like maybe there's a one guy. One of the things I liked about Mulan is like you don't see the happily ever after, but it's a possibility, because like she's like, she changes him and stuff, or well, she falls in love with him because like by being herself, and vice versa. But like with this, we don't even have that. We just have this just, oh well, my relationship with my mother's better. But it's like, if you can, but like breaking away from your mother, like finding your own world, doesn't mean you have to leave your mother behind. She can come with you. She can like experience your new world with you and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. No, you're making excellent points. And I think, you know, that idea that the princess will one day become the evil queen, I totally agree, is not true. And the reason it's not true is because the princess will be able to let go. The princess is a princess. She's sort of the ideal of womanhood. And so she will know, when she has her children of her own, she will know how to let them go, and that that's an important thing that she has to do. And these evil queens are evil because they don't know that. And they think that they have to kind of hold on to the children and keep them children, not for their own sake, but for the sake of the queen herself, in order for the queen to remain the sort of young woman. And so I think, yeah, I don't think that the princesses turn into the wicked stepmothers or the evil queens. I think that they become, you know, beautiful princesses / queens that understand how to do all of this stuff. And I think the other point is also true, that you want to know at the end of a story like this that the princess is going to be okay in all areas of her life, right? There are some stories where that isn't true. I mean, one of the reasons that I don't actually hate Moana is because even though there isn't a love interest for her, that isn't the story that they were telling, right? They were telling a story about this island is in danger from this creature, and Moana just happens to be the one that has to go on the journey to save them, and she does. The end. And you kind of get the sense that, like, eventually she'll grow up further and she'll maybe meet somebody nice and they'll get together and it'll be fine. You know, but it wasn't about that for her. Whereas these stories, these princess stories that are sort of either based on a fairy tale, or this one is sort of playing off of fairy tale tropes and ideas, even though it doesn't understand them. The princess has to grow up, and part of growing up is finding someone to spend your life with. And maybe you grow up first and then, you know, eventually you find that person. But in a movie, in a story, you want to know, okay, like, they're going to be okay. And this movie has set up this idea that she has to get married. And even if it's not to one of these guys, she's going to get married for love. But it doesn't leave her with any prospect that love is somewhere around the corner for her. In fact, it leaves her with the idea that, like, these 3 guys are the 3 guys. And maybe there's some, like, stable boy that she could marry because now she's allowed to marry whoever she wants, but it doesn't show us that. And so it just kind of leaves her in perpetual spinsterhood, being taken care of by mom and dad. And, you know, and dad's still this sort of, like, awful, brawling, infantile guy. And mom is, like, slightly less OCD, but still herself. And Merida is what? I mean, she's still going to have to wear dresses. I mean, like, you know, and sit on the throne and everything. So basically, the movie leaves Merida right where she started, right back where she started, at home with mom and dad. The only thing that she gains is that she doesn't have to marry any one of those awful guys, which means she's never going to marry. So hooray. Right? That's what the movie is. In my book, I call Brave a feminist dumpster fire of a movie, and this is why. So that's all I have to say about Brave. Yeah. There's like 2 minutes left if you guys have any questions that you want to ask, or things. Yeah, Jennifer, go ahead. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Just one thing that I wanted to say was, I mentioned that I was speaking about this movie, and it was really funny. And I told someone, and they said, "Oh yeah, you know, Brave, it's the only one I really don't like." And so even though people can't specifically pinpoint what it is like we can as to what's wrong with it, there's a knowing that for some reason they don't like this movie. And so I think that it shows through, even if you're not exactly sure why. And also I think that it's criminal because it's the plot was really slow too.
Yeah, it makes no sense. And I think, you know, sometimes I feel like it's a little bit unfair to sort of criticize the movie, because it's clear that, like, it's just a big mess, and that it originally was called The Bear and the Bow, and it obviously had, like, another story that had to do with this ancient prince that gets turned into a bear and all of that stuff. And then they sort of left that in and then changed it to this kind of feminism thing. And so it's a little unfair to sort of rip it apart like this, because it doesn't even know what is going on. But I think you know, it's true that a lot of people don't like it, but there is a sort of contingent of people who love it, and they love it for these really superficial reasons. Like, for example, like, you know, they love this scene where she sort of rips off her headdress and her hair comes tumbling down, or they love the scene where she shoots the arrow for her own hand, essentially, right? Like she says, like, no, you're not going to fight for me. I'm going to fight for myself, and I'm going to win. And I think
no love interest. Woo!
Right, exactly. There's no love interest. Yay. But I think, you know, but those, to me, those things are really superficial things. You know, like. Yeah. Not everyone can shoot a bow and arrow. Not everyone can have red hair, but everyone can be brave and courageous and follow their dreams. And that's what the other Disney princesses do. So we're actually out of time. So I just want to say thank you to you guys. You were fantastic and had such amazing insights, and I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you being here with me. And to those of you watching at home, and for everyone, there is one last session of this class coming up next week on Sunday, April 7th at 4 p.m. Eastern. And it is all about Frozen, which is another feminist movie. And we have lots of interesting things to say about that. And that one is full, so no one else can sign up, but everyone can watch on YouTube. And so thank you for watching. Thanks for being here. And there's one more, and we'll see you then. Bye.